Okay, guys, we're back with another episode of the Seth solo side quest. I think this is episode. What is this? Episode 5, I want to say. Of this one, we're going to be talking about a few different topics today. We got some MMA news, some WWE news, AEW news. Talk about a bit of that, but yeah, we'll literally be just going wherever, whichever direction we want to go in, and you know how it is. It's Seth from the Lonely Stoner podcast. I'm not joined by Evan today, hence this being a side quest episode. But yeah, let's get straight into it. I think one of the things I was looking at was a article on MMA Junkie from whoever it's written by, I don't know, but it's Khabib talking about Henry Cejudo being the only big fight for UFC flyweight champion Alexander Pantoja. And when I initially was reading this, I kind of agreed because Henry Cejudo probably is the biggest name in terms of name brand value that could make flyweight. That's probably the biggest fight that Pantoja would have. I think realistically, the realistic biggest fight would be Figueiredo, which we've said on the podcast before, because Figueiredo had beaten Pantoja and is coming off, a very competitive loss against Peter Yan. He didn't get, dominated or destroyed by Peter Yan. Figueiredo definitely held his own and had good moments in that, but ultimately did lose that fight. But not a fight where you're like, damn, this dude got dominated. You're like, Figueiredo done what he does, and it wasn't enough to beat Peter Yan, but Peter Yan's elite. And Figueiredo could easily go down to flyweight and have some joy again. But I imagine that weight cut isn't fun. It's not a weight cut I would want to make. Well, I physically couldn't, but if I was that sort of size, getting down to 125 would be brutal. But Figueiredo has been champion at 125 before, and he's beaten Pantoja before as well. If I'm not mistaken, he's beaten Pantoja before. So if he could go down and have an instant title fight and fight Pantoja and win, then it's worthwhile for Figueiredo. But I hear what Khabib's saying in terms of Henry Cejudo being the biggest fight, because, yeah, like I said, in terms of brand value, Cejudo's the biggest guy, the biggest, most popular guy that could make flyweight. Obviously, he's a cringy guy, but I wouldn't even say he sells loads of tickets because he probably doesn't. But at flyweight, that's the biggest sort of name you're going to get, Henry Cejudo. I'm not sure if Henry Cejudo himself wants to make that weight cut, because he's one of these guys that seems semi-retired, but he keeps himself in good enough shape to where if the right offer came in, he would come back, but who knows? Cejudo seems semi-halfway retired. He seems like funny enough, Dominic Cruz, who he beat Dominic Cruz, but sort of like Dominic Cruz, where like he's semi-retired. He's basically not going to come back, but if the right offer comes in, he'll be down. Is Pantoja at flyweight for the world title that right offer? Potentially, but I have a feeling dude does not want to make that weight cut again. But money talks, and bro, guys are hoes out here. They'll do anything for the bag. They will do anything for the bag. So yeah, what do you think of that in terms of Khabib saying that? I mean, Cejudo's in a interesting spot, even though he's beat Dominic Cruz. That was a few years ago now, and he's had back-to-back losses to Aljo and Marab, and he retired 3 years ago. Retired 3 years ago in 2020. Cejudo vacated both flyweight and bantamweight titles when he retired for 3. Oh no, he retired for 3 years, then came back, and yeah, back-to-back losses to Aljo and Marab. But those are guys. I mean, Aljo in particular is a big bantamweight, and Marab, who's the current bantamweight champion, and Aljo's fighting at flyweight now. Cejudo's not getting any younger though. Cejudo's 37 years old now, so like I said, he's probably not going to be super keen to make that weight cut. But even then, even if Cejudo makes that weight cut, there's no guarantee he beats Pantoja. Cejudo's going to be a lot bigger than Pantoja, and he's going to be a lot better wrestler. But Pantoja pushes the pace, he can take a shot, and he dishes them out. So we'll see. I mean, my pick for that fight would be Pantoja to win, though, if they were to fight. But depending how Cejudo shows up, because like we're saying, he's 37 now. It might not be great if he was to come back at this point, but I'd be super curious to know what you guys think. Let me know what you think in terms of Henry Cejudo coming back to fight Pantoja for the UFC Flyweight Championship. And next we've got 10 UFC fights we want to see in 2025. I'm probably not going to go through all of these fights. I'll go through a couple of them. Okay, I mean, the first one, John Jones v Tom Aspinall. I mean, that's an obvious one, you know. Of course, it's a one that everyone wants to see. John Jones and Tom Aspinall. It's a fight that everyone wants to see at heavyweight for the undisputed heavyweight championship. John Jones being the full champ, and Tom Aspinall being the interim, does put them, but it puts them in that position where you're like, okay, your next fight will be against each other, like no matter what. John Jones has kind of ducked in for as long as he can. It's either, I mean, for this point, it's Jones either retires or faces Aspinall. Now, who wins this fight? That's the real question. Who wins this fight? You've got Aspinall, who, from what we've seen of him, can move like a middleweight and has got the knockout power to put anyone to sleep. That being said, when you're the size that Tom Aspinall is, you know, all of 240, 250, you can't move like that for 5 rounds. I don't care who you are. You're not moving like that for 5 rounds. You've got that for around 2 rounds max. That being said, nobody's taking Tom Aspinall the distance because he's that good. He finishes everyone. But no one's finished John Jones. That's the reality. No one's finished John Jones. No one's worked out the code. We've seen guys have some joy against John Jones. Gustafsson in the first fight. Dominic Reyes. These are guys who had a particular style about them. These guys were long fighters. They were big, tall, long fighters like John Jones, but they were boxing heavy. Now, those are the 2 guys that have given John Jones the most trouble. If we look back at John Jones' resume, Gustafsson first fight, Reyes fight, right? Now, Aspinall, I haven't got each guy's dimensions in front of me, but in terms of height, Tom Aspinall must be around same sort of height as John Jones. In length, I'm not sure because John Jones is super lanky. But Tom Aspinall isn't like Gustafsson and Reyes where you can be competitive with Gustafsson and Reyes and win a fight. You can hold their shots, you can take shots from them and still carry on going. If Aspinall lands on John Jones the same way Gustafsson and Reyes was, John Jones is going to sleep. Which is what gives Aspinall the edge for me when I'm picking this fight. That being said, John Jones probably can out-wrestle Tom Aspinall, realistically. And I'd imagine that's what John Jones would try and do. I think he's too smart and, to be honest, at this point of his career, he's too risk-adverse to stand and strike with Tom Aspinall. I mean, worst case scenario, he fights in boxing range with Tom Aspinall and he just gets slept. But realistically, I'd be surprised if John Jones stands toe-to-toe with Tom Aspinall. Because that's the one way John Jones is guaranteed to lose if he fights like that. But we'll see. I think John Jones' keys to victory is takedowns and wearing Aspinall down. And then come the 4th or 5th round when Aspinall can't move like a middleweight anymore because he won't be able to at 250. I don't care who you are. You're not doing that for 5 rounds. Not happening. And then maybe he probably just wins a 5-round decision over him. But Aspinall has the tools to make that fight very competitive and even has the tools to win, to be honest. He's got that in him. Well, what other fights have we got here? Okay, I guess we'll talk about this one. Topuria v Movsar Evloev. Now, Topuria won the Lonely Stoners MMA Fighter of the Year 2024 with huge wins over Max Holloway and Volkanovski. And Topuria looks like he's sort of that next evolution in MMA fighter. We kind of, where he looks like he's just that guy who's going to be on top for a long time. He's going to be super hard to beat because he's a great wrestler, really good striker, boxer in particular, turns over his punches really well. And that's something that, you know, watching his fight series come up, particularly that knockout of Holloway. The way like he's throwing his shots, he's not throwing it like a MMA fighter who's been taught boxing. He's punching like a boxer, which we have seen from other people, but not really. Not like this, you know. Like the best boxing we've seen in MMA has still been like MMA boxing. It's not boxing in terms of technique, but Topuria is showing that, and he's knocked out, like I said, legends of the featherweight division in Max Holloway and Volkanovski, and really the most likely chance, I think, the most likely fight for Topuria next is Diego Lopez, but Evloev isn't a million miles away from that, I don't think. Assuming Topuria beats Diego Lopez, which probably will, in my opinion, I'd favour Topuria over Lopez, and assuming Topuria still wants to stay at featherweight. This is also a big assumption that we're making, because he's made it sound like he doesn't want to stay at featherweight. He's made it sound like he's won the belt, he wants to go up to lightweight, face Oliveira, and then fight for the title. But Bleacher Report have said one of their fights to make for 2025 is Topuria v Evloev. Now, Evloev is a Russian. He's a wrestler. Super boring fights, but he's 19-0. And he's just beaten a former bantamweight champion in Aljamain Sterling. So Evloev isn't, in my opinion, he's not a million miles away off deserving a title shot. Maybe if Topuria faces Lopez, I'm assuming Topuria stays at featherweight, Topuria faces Lopez, beats him, then, in the meantime, Evloev fights, he wins, he's then 20-0, then Evloev v Topuria next for that title makes a lot of sense. And to be honest, Evloev probably deserves the chance before Volkanovski, but I'm not sure if I'd say he deserves it before Diego Lopez, just because of the way Movsar Evloev fights as well, because he's a very boring fighter. He's a grappler, which is why he's been on such a streak and is still only fighting Aljo in the prelims of pay-per-views. Because if he was an exciting fighter on this streak, knocking guys out instead of winning 3-round decisions every fight, then he'd be much higher ranked and there'd be a lot more hype behind him. But in terms of talent and capability, and in terms of resume as well, Evloev is the logical next option potentially after Diego Lopez. But let's see what the UFC wants to do with that. I think that's okay. And okay, now we've got Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev. So for listeners of the podcast, they understand my situation with Dricus du Plessis, a guy who's the worst UFC middleweight champion in particular that we've had in the modern era. He wins fights, but not because he's good, because he's got plot armor. Anyone that knows fighting and anyone that's listened to my podcast knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. He's really sorry as hell. I don't get why people would like him as a fighter. He's effective, so I guess you can like that. But there is a difference between being technically good and being effective. And in fact, I would say DDP is the prime example. Dricus du Plessis is the prime example of a fighter that is technically poor but effective as a fighter. So he's managed to win himself a world championship, and he's even managed to, get a nice title defense or a future probably title defense against Strickland, because Strickland's also pretty bad as a fighter. But again, another guy like du Plessis who's got sort of plot armor and again technically awful, but somehow manages to win fights and somehow managed to get himself another title shot. But the fight that Bleacher Report are saying should be next is Dricus du Plessis v Khamzat Chimaev. Now that is a fight that I would love to see, because Khamzat would absolutely ragdoll him, and there's no reason why Khamzat shouldn't do what he done to Robert Whittaker to Chimaev. To du Plessis, sorry. Khamzat should be able to absolutely ragdoll du Plessis, grab him, just run at him, grab him, take him down, beat him up, choke him out. Easy, inside 2 rounds, new middleweight champion. The only way that doesn't happen is if du Plessis uses his plot armor again and somehow keeps the fight striking for 5 rounds and maybe even stops Chimaev, because DDP is a big guy for the weight division. I mean, you can see it when he fights these guys like Strickland and Izzy, that he's like built a lot bigger than these guys. And du Plessis uses that to his advantage, to be fair. I mean, that's the only thing that's his only real benefit, to be fair, because he's so big and sort of tough, he doesn't get finished, And because he's so big, he's able to wear on these guys, and over 5 rounds, able to get the win. But he's really bad, and is the worst, technically speaking, the worst champion we've had of the modern era. And Strickland's up there too, as well. Strickland's definitely up there too. But yeah, hopefully Khamzat is next in line for the title shot and should ragdoll him. But if he doesn't, it's plot armor. But yeah, that's all from... I'm not going to go through all of these fights. I mean, some of them are pretty good, to be fair, but yeah, I can't be bothered to go through all of these fights that Bleacher Report are talking about for the UFC. But the next one we're going to look at is 7 WWE and AEW stars who desperately need to rebound in 2025. And again, just like the previous article, I'm not going to go through all 7, but I'll go through a couple of them. First up, we've got Adam Cole from AEW. And again, another guy who definitely, desperately needs a rebound. Adam Cole, he needs to rebound in a few different ways. Because I think his wife left him, or I'm not sure if they were married in terms Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. I don't know if they were actually married, but they were going out for a long time. I don't think they're going out anymore. Game is game. But Adam Cole joined AEW towards the end of 2023, I want to say. Or maybe it was a start. He joined in 2023, I think. Maybe it was the start of 2023 or end of 2022 he joined. But he's been in AEW for a few years now. Unfortunately, he's been injured. And that's ultimately killed all of his momentum. And also he's being booked pretty badly as well. But to be honest, it's mostly the injuries that have killed his momentum. The storyline with MJF, they've absolutely butchered. But they've done a double turn where they started off as MJF as the face and Cole as the heel, and now switched it so Cole's the face and MJF is the heel. It's been a storyline that's actually absolutely been butchered and has not been helped by both of them being injured, but particularly in Adam Cole being injured more. And Adam Cole needs to rebound in that sense, but also needs to sort himself out in terms of his look as well. As a wrestler, I didn't really used to care when I was younger. When I was a younger wrestling fan, I didn't really used to care what these guys look like, but you need to have some sort of believability about you where you need to actually look like an athlete, bro. This dude looks like he works in the office with me, right? He looks like one of these dudes that I would see in the office. Probably one of the cooler guys in the office, to be fair. I'll give it to him. Adam Cole, you look like one of the cool guys in the office, but you look like a brother that works in the office. So I'd see you in the office. I'd probably fist bump you, bro. But come on. Get some injections going. Get some HGH. Get some TRT. Get some Tren, and put some muscle on that frame, bro. Because you look like a nerd. You're smaller than me, shorter than me. I look like I could beat the brakes off you, bro. And I'm not even calling out Adam Cole for a fight, bro. Come on, this is the Seth Solo side quest. I'm not calling dude out for a fight, but you're what, 5'10"? You look like a $150. I don't care what they list you as in wrestling. Because Chris Jericho at one point they were saying he weighs like 220. And he's like 5'9". He was looking like one chode at one point. Come on, bro. Adam Cole, you need to put some muscle on. That's what I'm saying. And there was a time, actually, in Ring of Honor, when you came back from that, when you, like I'm talking directly to Adam Cole, but there was a time when Adam Cole came back from a bad injury in Ring of Honor, and he looked pretty fat. I prefer fat Adam Cole over scrawny Adam Cole. I prefer that, actually. Okay? Because I know some fat guys that can fight. Kevin Owens, he's a fat guy. He can fight. He's believable. Kevin Owens is a guy with a beer belly, but he's got like sleeve tattoos and a beard. He looks like he could fight a guy, you know. Adam Cole, you're walking out, you're like 5'10", a $150 in skinny jeans, bro. Come on, bro. You need to sort yourself out, man. Come on. And who else have we got here? Okay. We've got a guy, another AEW star in Wardlow. Another guy, Wardlow, who he's fallen off insanely quickly. This guy at one point was white hot, right? This dude was white hot, and he was, he even won the he won the TNT championship, held that for a bit of a hot potato championship, which, guess what? I do not mind. I like hot potato championships. Keep it unpredictable. Every couple of weeks, have these guys lose it. Make it feel like when these guys fight on a pay-per-view, literally anything can happen. Don't make it like, okay, this guy's won the championship. He's going to hold it for at least 6 months now. So don't even bother watching his matches because you know he's not going to lose. That's what I hate. And that's what they've got way too much of in wrestling at the moment. In terms of world championships in AEW and WWE, they're both the same. They both like long title reigns way too much and it keeps it predictable and boring. They need to change that up. I talked about this on the podcast, but you look at when was the most successful period in wrestling. Not only the most successful, but the most fun and most entertaining television. It was the Attitude Era. The longest title reign during the Attitude Era was 6 weeks. It was 6 weeks. So don't tell me about 2-year, 3-year title reigns. Cody Rhodes' 1-year title reign. Cody Rhodes should have dropped that title at Saturday night's main event. He didn't. He better drop it at Royal Rumble, but he won't. But that's something else. That's something else entirely different. We're talking about Wardlow right now. But yeah, Wardlow's a guy who came into AEW. He came in initially as like a bodyguard for MJF. I really liked that partnership. That was really good. You had Wardlow. He wasn't talking, but was a physical. You know, he was a beast, beating the brakes off guys. And MJF doing his thing as well, winning, great promos, great matches. But then they split. The split was a storyline that was ultimately just overlooked because there was a bigger storyline going on at the moment when MJF was trying to leave. When MJF was trying to leave AEW. So that storyline happened at that time. No one cared about Wardlow and MJF at that point. Shame, because it could have been a really great storyline and could have had a huge payoff, but didn't. They just ruined it. But that ruined his momentum. But Wardlow was able to move on from that and then went on to fight for the TNA, I keep calling it the TNA Championship, the TNT Championship, and would win that a couple of times, I think, but was in and out. And now he's part of, I don't know if he's still a part of that stable with, he is, the Undisputed Kingdom with Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, Adam Cole, and Wardlow. Wardlow is that's that stable. But again, they've butchered that storyline as well. AEW are really bad at booking stables. You can tell that AEW is basically run by the boys because they just do stuff that they think is cool. Oh, it'd be great if you imagine a stable with Wardlow and Sean Spears and MJF and Tully Blanchard as the manager. That'd be so cool. Yeah, it would be. What's the story? Well, we don't know about that. That's the most important thing, bro. Why are they a stable and how are they going to end up breaking up as a stable? You have to think about a story, start, middle, and end. Not just, we want cool moments. Which is why I don't watch AEW television anymore. And which is why, to be fair, I don't watch WWE television either, to be fair. But I'll only watch the pay-per-views because, particularly in AEW, they're great at putting on great events. They're a super indie now at this point. Their TV numbers are falling off a cliff. They're basically a super indie where they'll put on great, entertaining events, but don't bother watching the TV because nothing means nothing. Storylines are pretty much non-existent, apart from maybe they're able to sustain 1 or 2 main event storylines, but that's not enough to keep someone watching 2 hours twice for 2 hours every week. Dynamite and Collision. That's not enough. But yeah, Wardlow's a guy who majorly needs to rebound and quite easily could do it if he leaves the Undisputed Kingdom, which that stable's been a failure and is not a good fit for Wardlow at all. Wardlow needs to be by himself, keep him solo, and just run through guys. And then build him up to like a international title shot. Have him do a triple threat against Wardlow, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Takeshita, and just have like a last man standing or Extreme Rules match, and just let those 3 go ham. 3 big brothers, 3 big athletic guys that will just beat the brakes off each other. That's what you need. And if you want Wardlow to go over, he won't and he probably shouldn't. But if he does, whatever, I don't care. Just put on a good match. and get Wardlow back on TV and get him destroying guys, which is what he's good for. And he's super athletic. It's a shame for him. It's really a shame because he's a guy with so much potential and so much talent. But what I'm reading here is that depending on his contract status, you know, who knows? If his contract with AEW is coming up, he might not want to re-sign, and WWE would give him a spot in a heartbeat. That being said, WWE, similar to AEW, they're flush with talent right now. Flush with talent with a lot of momentum as well. So Wardlow needs to consider that because he could go to WWE and potentially could be the same thing in terms of him not getting used and not getting used correctly. He's the sort of guy again, he's not super young, so he doesn't need to go to NXT, but they probably would put him in NXT. Maybe pair him back with Sean Spears again, but I don't want to see all that stuff. If he's coming back, rebrand him, bring him back as a new guy, bring him in as a new guy in WWE, have him run through some guys, put the NXT strap on him, lose it, main roster, and then let him cook. Very simple stuff, but in wrestling they tend to overcomplicate things. But yeah, that's what I think about Wardlow. He's a guy, like I said, a guy with tremendous potential and definitely has got something to offer AEW at least. Even if he's not a world championship caliber guy, which I think he probably is. If you put him with a mouthpiece, if you put him with a good manager, Wardlow could be a main event talent if built correctly. But let's see. Let's see what they want to do with him. What else have we got here? I mean, Ricky Starks as well, another AEW guys. I think I've just ended up going with all the AEW guys because AEW just... It's a shame what AEW are doing here because they've got so much talent here. So much young talent as well that really could be doing so much more for the show. But it seems that AEW are refusing to use Ricky Starks in any capacity because he was hardly seen in 2024. I think... I remember hearing that he may have had an injury, but I saw recently in an interview him saying it was an injury scare, but he got it checked out and he never had an injury, and they still just haven't used him since. So, super weird situation for him to be in. But Ricky Starks is a guy who I really enjoy most of his work. From what I've seen in AEW, his promos were pretty good. He seemed to be one of these guys that really put a lot of effort into his promos and try and keep his promos as real as he could. I remember when he first joined AEW, it was during the pandemic, and I'm sure it was as part of one of like Cody Rhodes open challenges. And he came in impressed, done his thing, then got signed full time to AEW. You know, great news for him, and he even became AEW World Tag Team Champion. I'm sure. Yes, he was Tag Team Champion with Big Bill. Now, that was an interesting tag team. A tag team I liked a lot, to be fair. And they're basically just doing the same thing with Big Bill, and they've just put him with Chris Jericho. And just have Jericho as a mouthpiece and Big Bill doing his thing. But it's worse because Big Bill's been wrestling less. At least when he was with Starks, he was in like a full-time tag team, and these guys were wrestling, if not every week, but wrestling quite often because they're the World Tag Team Champions. But in 2023, that was like maybe the peak of Ricky Starks' career because he was in storylines with Bryan Danielson, Chris Jericho, and CM Punk, and put on pretty good matches with all three of those guys. Because Ricky Starks he's a athletic guy. He's not massive, but at least he's an in shape, athletic guy who looks like he could do something to someone. Unlike Adam Cole, but to be honest, it's one of those ones where surely it can't get any worse for him. He hardly wrestled all of 2024. He hardly wrestled. So, unless they want to bench him for all of this year, it can't get any worse for Ricky Starks. So, at least for Ricky Starks, it's the sort of situation where it's only up from here. Which, as bad as it sounds, that's really where we're at with him. It's only upwards from here. But, again, another guy that I don't know what his contract situation's like, but if his contract is to come up, WWE will probably give him a contract and a heartbeat. I hope they don't send him to NXT. They probably will because that's what they do. But I hope they don't send him to NXT. But we'll see what's next for Ricky Starks. Yeah, a real shame with him because, like I said, super entertaining, super charismatic, pretty good on the mic, pretty good in ring, well-rounded guy. Is the sort of guy that in a different time you would maybe look at putting the company on his back, because there's not one thing he can't really do. You know, maybe if he went to a smaller promotion, he probably would be that guy. If he was to go to a company like NWA or, well, AEW own Ring of Honor now, but if Tony Khan was serious about actually building up Ring of Honor, Starks is the sort of guy that they could put Ring of Honor on the back of Ricky Starks if they wanted to. But let's see, it's all in Tony Khan's hands for these AEW guys, because there's plenty of talent there. It's just they need to use them correctly. But yeah, that's been it from me. I'm Seth from the Lonely Stones podcast. This has been episode 5 of the Seth solo side quest, and I'm out. We'll see if Evan wants to drop a solo episode of his own. We'll find out. I'm sure we'll do it soon. If he does, if not, we'll see you next time at the Lonely Stoner podcast. If not that, then I'll see you next time on the Seth solo side quest, and I'm out. Cool, guys.